Hey folks, how y'all doing? Picking up from where we left off last time, I wanted to touch on a couple of new concepts and topics. I really want to get into talking about angles and how we can use deception to put raiders into dangerous positions. Some of you who watched the last video might recognize this setup just a little bit with our use of angles, but what I specifically want to touch on is how we can use this downward angled block with a trap that can only see half of the raider's path. And the reason being is this. When a raider is moving along the path here, their feet are going to enter the trigger range of this trap somewhere around right here. Their head and their sight line is going to be up at around this point here, meaning they have no visibility of the trap. So we can trigger a trap without the player even seeing that it is there. In some situations, that means that we give up some lethality of that trap because only part of it even can access the player. However, we can do some tricky things with this. So if we are using a bolt shot, we can use a hollow cube with masquerade to path a guard to a dangerous position for them, either with dead man switch or just to like drop in behind them and kill, like attack them from behind. Or, as is the case here, we can kind of use both, a dead man switch, but in addition, we're using a bomb deployer to make this lower section of the chute dangerous, plus we're making the upper section dangerous as well, because the bombs that don't see the player are being deflected upwards and down through this opaque corrosive cube. In addition, this guard and its pathing is interrupted by the masquerade cube when it is broken by bombs being deployed. The guard will path up here, walk into this corrosive cube, die, and fall down into this section of the chute. So, got a couple of different things going on for us here, and let's take a look at just what the player will be experiencing if they're in this section. Block that off. Pay particular attention to where the trigger indicator appears as we're moving forwards. So we didn't even see that trap. Bombs come up here, and then guard falls down here. We can kind of control a little bit more. Like we could move the bottom of this ramp up a little bit and like have the angle come over here so that the player's more likely to be right in the range of the guard and have less safety. But we can control a few different things, and mostly I just wanted to show like what this looks like. Let's take a quick look at what it looks like from the outside. We're going to delete those. All right. There we go. So the bombs are breaking the hollow cube, kind of pathing low and high, making two different dangerous areas. And then we're dropping our dead man switch guard into the lower portion of the chute. We can do some different things. We can put the guard in different places. We can drop two different guards, one down this chute and one, say, down a vertical chute here if we wanted to, maybe coming out through here. But just kind of getting the idea across that angles are incredibly useful when building, and oftentimes having a trap with a full view of the player's positioning means the player has a full view of that trap too. So getting to think about like how we can use these half blocks in order to create some situations where traps are firing before the player can even see it. All right, here we have a new trap that makes use of angles, a couple of different combinations here. First, we're using an angled bomb splitter, which is a little bit unique, something that I came up with recently. And then we're following it up with a bolt shot, also using our angles again, which I will demonstrate. I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate the trap in action, and then I will explain how it works. Alright, so our player will come up this path here, and they can't even see this bomb deployer before it's triggering. We achieve that by blocking off the bomb destroyer with a piston, which also acts as a splitter. When it's deployed, the bombs are going to bounce off the front of the piston and through these corrosive cubes. Next up, the player makes it past here, assuming that they've figured out this section. Also, this is important. I'm entering the player into a downward chute because bombs want to travel further down slopes. So by getting the bombs to come around this corner and then instantly start going downwards, we can keep the bombs roughly even with where the player is, even if they start running pretty early. Anyways, next we come along this section here, and we've got a bolt shot. Player avoids it, and we drop a dead man switch through this section right here. Let me show you how that's working. So this bolt shot is double shot and the continuous mod to cover this space for as long as possible. We want those shots to be landing for a long time to keep the player in this little section that they feel is safe. This gets a lot of players the first time. I think my success rate is probably 80 to 90%. It's incredibly high. So players duck in here behind this corner, and what happens is we're using half the bolt shot to shoot down the corridor here, and we've got a masquerade holocube positioned right here for the bolt shot to break. Right up here, we have a guard set to path over that masquerade holocube, which interrupts their path, so they just hang out right here until it's broken. When it's broken, they come up this path, walk into this, and keep their head in this lava cube for just a few seconds, and then they come sliding down this path and land right where the player is standing. Let me demonstrate that one more time really quickly. So that pops the holocube, and we will wait for the guard. And the guard comes down and explodes as the player is hiding from the bolt shot. This little corner here is incredibly effective at killing some players, so would recommend using some similar setups or iterating. I'd love to know what people can come up with that makes use of similar concepts, but I'm sure you can come up with something amazing. I have one more trap using angles to demonstrate. Going to come right over here. This setup is quite interesting and quite fun. Here we have some bolt shots, and we've got a couple of sentries aiming down into this little corridor that the player's going to walk along. The sentries will fire down that corridor and bounce shots upwards, which will then get reflected up this chute back and forth. We then have a masquerade holocube way up at the top of the chute that gets popped by those sentry beams, allowing a guard to path forwards. We see him right there. He's going to path forwards, die to the double stacked corrosive cubes as he falls through them, and he's going to die up high, which means that he's going to be falling while the dead man switch trigger is counting down, meaning the player has very little time to see it, let alone hear it and react to it before the before the dead man switch explodes. So let's take a look at how that will function. First, I'm using a tracking bolt shot, which sees my feet and then kind of tracks me. So if the player doesn't back up far enough, they're going to get shot here. I got it on double. It's not necessary to be sure, but then the player walks forward, backs up to avoid those shots, kind of walks forward, and that's interesting. The guard died a little bit low here. Let's try to modify this so that the guard dies up high. It's possible that he had enough speed that he didn't die within the shoot. So let's try that one more time. Alright, let's take a shot at that. So that's deadly in its own right, but I didn't quite get the guard on that one. Let's see how this works. Okay, and there we go. We could drop 2 guards. So we could have one guard landing in this section, and then we could have another guard pathing this direction, landing more in this section here, which we could say have some sort of like path where the guard's going to fall like more in this section here, so we could cover more area. But basically the way to set this up and see like where you need to put your guards is what I always do is I just stack a ton of hollow cubes, and then when I trigger this, I step back and look at how far up the chute those sentries are firing, so I know like where the topmost one breaks, and I can then place my guards accordingly. I know that almost everything along this side is getting broken, and like up to like somewhere around here is also getting broken. Looks like we had a couple of beams hit right here, so this cube is also being broken. So I can use this to kind of like estimate like where I need to place my guards, and then I delete the rest of those hollow cubes and just keep the ones that I want. So we could probably place that there, and then delete the rest. And then we could put a guard set to path in right here. One note when dropping guards long distances like this, if they fall more than 2 blocks, your path is going to be broken and interrupted, and you can't save it. So what you do is instead you drop them onto a solid block, which I will do right here. So he landed on top of that solid block right there, and then you delete that solid block, and we've saved his path, so he's good. That should be it. So let's put some corrosive cubes here to let them die on the way down. I don't know if that's too many. Just test it and make sure that you're getting the numbers right. That's actually not going to work because I forgot to put on the masquerade on that hollow cube, so I'll just pass right through. There we go. Let's give this a try and see what it looks like. Alright, so the player comes forward, comes along this path. I'm just going to break that. And not bad, we've got some pretty good coverage there. We have this forward section and we have the back corner of this. So if the player is anywhere forwards or along this path, they should be taking a dead man switch. Right. So anyways, that more or less covers what I wanted to go over in this video. Mostly I just wanted to get people thinking about angles, thinking about how to hide traps from players and like using sightlines. So like this triggering when it sees people's feet, these being able to pass through solid blocks, and we can use opaque cubes to hide things that are happening above the player and drop guards from a very high height, with that the player being able to react in time to avoid being killed here. So just all sorts of different ways we can set things up and surprise people. Anyways, hope everyone got something from this. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, a comment, just let me know what you want to see in the next video. Anyways, hope everyone has a great night.